Hi, it's Miss Dubras here. Welcome to Lesson 5 of the Climatic Hazards Unit. Today's lesson is focused on how tropical storms might be affected by climate change. Please make sure you've got a pen, a piece of paper and a different colour pen to mark with, and also make sure that you're working somewhere quiet and away from distraction. So whenever you're ready, we can get started. So the title of our lesson today is How Might Tropical Storms Be Affected by Climate Change? So we're aware that climate change is taking place on our planet, but what we want to know is how may that influence or affect tropical storms now and into the future? In order for us to understand how climate change might affect tropical storms, there are three key terms that we have to know the definitions of so that you're able to fully explain the impact of climate change on tropical storms. So I'm now going to reveal the three key terms that we need to understand for our lesson. Once I've revealed the key term and the definition, you may want to pause the video so you can make a note of them. So the first key term that we need to be aware of is tropical storm distribution, or the way in which tropical storms are spread out across a geographical area. And in this situation, we're talking about the global scale. The next key term is tropical storm intensity, and what we mean by this is the strength of a tropical storm. And the last key term is tropical storm frequency, so how often a tropical storm of a particular intensity occurs. So for example, how often do we have very intense, powerful tropical storms, and how often do we have weaker tropical storms? So if you'd like to pause the video to make a note of the key terms, you can do that now and then resume when you are ready. So we're now going to check that we definitely understand those three key definitions. And if you'd like to pause the video to make your decision about the answer to this question, you are very welcome to do so, and then you can resume the video when you are ready. So let's look at the question. Which option below defines tropical storm intensity? Is it option 1? How often a tropical storm of a particular intensity occurs? Option 2, a long-term change in the Earth's climate? Option 3, the way in which tropical storms are spread out across a geographical area? Or option 4, the strength of a tropical storm? So if you need to pause the video to make your decision, you can do that now and then resume the video when you are ready. So let's check to see if you've got the answer correct. So the intensity of a tropical storm is option 4. It means the strength of a tropical storm. But what about the other options? So option 1, how often a tropical storm of a particular intensity occurs is the frequency of a tropical storm. Option 2, a long-term change in the Earth's climate is actually the definition for climate change. Option 3, the way in which tropical storms are spread out across a geographical area refers to tropical storm distribution. So make sure that you have got your work marked, and if you wanted to add any other notes to any of the other options, you are more than welcome to do so. So we're now going to practice a geographical skill at this point in the lesson. I'd like to study the satellite image of Hurricane Katrina from 2005, and I want you to consider this question. How do we know that this satellite image is of a tropical storm? So what clues are there within the image that suggest that to us? I'd like you to create a list of at least 3 suggestions, so at least 3 ways that we know that what we see in the image is a tropical storm. So I'd like you to pause the video to complete your task and then resume once you're ready, and then we will mark our work to see if we have come up with at least 3 different suggestions. So let's review your work. Make sure that you've got a different colour pen so that you can mark it. So I'm going to provide you with 4 different suggestions about how we can be sure that what we see within this image is a tropical storm. So I would like you to mark any that you've got and give yourself a big tick, or if you've missed anything, you can add in your answers in your different coloured pen. So the first indication that this is a tropical storm is the fact that we see the cloud is rotating. Now in this image I can see that the cloud is rotating anti-clockwise, which suggests to me that this tropical storm is in the northern hemisphere. If it was in the southern hemisphere, it would be rotating clockwise. My next indication that this is a tropical storm is that I can see in the centre of the storm there is the eye of the storm. So the eye of the storm is evident at the centre of the storm. So it's a clear area that we can see within the centre. My next clue is that this storm is over the ocean, and tropical storms only form over oceans, so that gives me another indication that this could be a tropical storm. And the last indication is that I can see this is a very large scale formation, a very large scale storm, and there is a huge amount of swirling, rotating cloud. So that also indicates to me that this could be a tropical storm image. So how many did you get right? And remember, if you've missed anything out, you can add to your notes using your different colour pen. So before we consider how climate change might influence or affect tropical storms, let's remind ourselves what conditions are needed for tropical storm formation and development. When these conditions are particularly significant, some very intense tropical storms can form. So an example of this is Typhoon Haiyan that you see in the image from 2013. This particular storm was a Category 5 storm when it made landfall in the Philippines, causing devastation. A Category 5 storm has winds over 156 miles per hour. So let's consider what creates or forms a tropical storm as a reminder. So tropical storms require sea surface temperatures to be at least 26.5 degrees Celsius to a depth of approximately 70 metres to form. This allows rapid evaporation of warm, moist air. This warm, moist air will cool and condense in the atmosphere to create huge cumulonimbus storm clouds. Tropical storms also need low wind shear in order to form. That means the winds are constant and stable, and this keeps those storm clouds intact rather than pulling them apart. And in order to rotate or spin, the Coriolis effect is needed. So interestingly, one of these conditions is already starting to change. So sea surface temperatures have risen by 0.9 degrees Celsius since 1880. Could this be due to climate change? And what effect has this had on tropical storms? And also, what might happen in the future if this change continues? And that's what we're going to review for the rest of this lesson. So it should be noted here that the impact of climate change on tropical storms is not known or agreed by scientists. We have to use our current understanding to review past data and predict what the future may hold. But climate science is extremely complex and it is always developing. So for the rest of this lesson, we're going to review how climate change may affect the intensity, the distribution and the frequency of tropical storms by reviewing what we already know and what the thoughts are about the future. So let's first consider tropical storm intensity or strength. The intensity of tropical storms are linked to their wind speeds. So once a wind speed in a tropical storm has been measured, we then allocate the tropical storm to a category linked to the Saffir-Simpson scale that you see on the screen. So if your sustained wind speeds are between 74 and 95 miles per hour, your tropical storm will be regarded as a Category 1 storm and the damage will be relatively minimal. If your sustained wind speeds reach 157 plus miles per hour, your tropical storm will be regarded as a Category 5 storm, and these are the most catastrophic. And an example of this is Typhoon Haiyan in 2013. It was a Category 5 storm when it made landfall in the Philippines, causing devastation. So tropical storm intensity is linked to wind speed, but it also is linked to a couple of other indicators. So the amount of rainfall released by the tropical storm and the height of the storm surges are also important in us making a decision about how intense tropical storms are. So what do we know so far? Well, we know that the number of Category 4 and 5 storms has increased since the 1970s, suggesting that tropical storm intensity is increasing. But what about the future? There's a suggestion that wind speeds are predicted to increase by between 2% and 11% by 2100, which of course suggests to us that tropical storms are going to continue to increase in intensity. Rainfall is also predicted to increase by 20%, so again an increase in intensity. And obviously if wind speeds increase, storm surges will also increase in height, so they are also predicted to increase in intensity in the future. So why might this be? Well, it is suggested that this is linked to climate change, because as the average global temperature increases, this will increase the sea surface temperatures, which will encourage more evaporation. And if you have an increase in evaporation, that will increase your wind speeds. And obviously an increase in evaporation will increase the amount of condensation and cloud formation. So therefore your rainfall is likely to increase. And of course, if your wind speeds are increasing, your storm surges will also increase in height. So if climate change does continue to warm our planet, that could increase the intensity of our tropical storms in the future. So we've just found out that tropical storms can vary in their intensity, but let's just take a moment to consider how they might actually affect people and the environment. So why it is that we maybe study tropical storms and why we should perhaps be concerned about them. So I'd like you to study the photograph which shows the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina from 2005 in the USA. I'd like you to create a list of ways that tropical storms affect people and the environment, and I want you to come up with at least 5 ideas. So please pause the video to complete your task and then resume the video once you are ready to mark your work. So we're now ready to mark your work. So I've provided for you on the screen a list of different suggestions that you may have come up with. If you've got any of these suggestions, give yourself a tick. If you're missing any of them, you may want to add them to your notes. You might also have other ideas that I've not included, which is absolutely fine. So how do tropical storms affect people? Loss of homes, homelessness, businesses damaged, loss of income, infrastructure damaged, loss of life, injuries, insurance payouts, crops flooded, fire risks, cost of repairs. And how do they affect the environment? Vegetation uprooted, loss of animal life, flooding, sewage leaks, water supplies polluted, and debris. So tropical storms can affect people in the environment in lots of very significant ways. So let's just take a moment to consider what we've learned about so far. If tropical storms are predicted to become more intense in the future, the impacts of tropical storms could worsen. So what we've just reviewed here could become far worse in the future if tropical storms do become more intense, maybe due to climate change. So let's now consider tropical storm distribution, so the way in which tropical storms are spread out across a geographical area. So we already have quite a good understanding of the current distribution of tropical storms. They form between 5 and 30 degrees north and south of the equator. They form mainly between the tropics, so between the Tropic of Cancer in the northern hemisphere and the Tropic of Capricorn in the southern hemisphere, and they form where sea surface temperatures are at least 26.5 degrees Celsius. And on the map, the area in orange shows us where tropical storms currently form. This is their current distribution. So what about the future? Well, if climate change increases the average global temperature, this could increase sea surface temperatures at a higher latitude, so further north or further south of the equator. This might mean that tropical storms will form in different locations in the future. And if they form in different locations, this could mean more people will be affected by tropical storms. And it also might be that people who have never experienced them before will also now experience the devastation that they can cause. And of course, they won't be used to managing or dealing with this type of hazard. So climate change could affect tropical storm distribution in the future, although scientists are not 100% in agreement with this at the moment. So let's now consider tropical storm frequency in relation to climate change. When we refer to frequency, we're referring to how often a tropical storm of a particular intensity occurs. So we need to think about what the scientific consensus is at the moment. Well, it's quite interesting because it's not actually clear if climate change will increase or decrease the overall number of tropical storms. So on average, 80 to 100 storms form per year, but whether that will increase or decrease in the future is up for debate. What scientists do think will happen is that Category 4 and 5 storms may increase in the future. And they also think that Category 1 to 3 storms may actually decrease in the future. So this could suggest that the overall number of tropical storms may stay the same, but the intensities will differ. But it's not something that we can be sure about at this time. There has been some interesting data that's emerged from the Atlantic Ocean to help scientists with their study of tropical storm frequency and potential links to climate change. So in the Atlantic Ocean, there does appear to be a trend. Tropical storms are increasing in number each decade. Also, there has been a higher than average number of tropical storms in the Atlantic Ocean in 16 of the last 24 years. Now, we are aware that the sea surface temperatures on our planet have been increasing. So since 1880, they've increased by 0.9 degrees Celsius. So it could suggest that climate change is already affecting or influencing our tropical storms. However, there's still a lot of work to do around ensuring that we can accurately predict what will happen in the future. So just to check that we've understood everything that we've covered so far, I would like you to answer the following questions. So number 1, what has happened to the number of Category 4 and 5 storms since the 1970s? Number 2, what is predicted to happen to tropical storm wind speeds in the future? Number 3, what is predicted to happen to tropical storm rainfall in the future? Number 4, what is predicted to happen to tropical storm distribution in the future? Number 5, what is predicted to happen to tropical storm frequency in the future? So I'd like you to pause the video at this point to answer those questions in full sentences, and then once you've finished, please resume the video so that you can mark your work. So we're now ready to mark our work. So please make sure that you've got a different colour pen so that you can tick your answer if it's correct, and you can make any adjustments or changes if you need to. So question 1, what has happened to the number of Category 4 and 5 storms since the 1970s? They have increased. Number 2, what is predicted to happen to tropical storm wind speeds in the future? So the prediction is there'll be an increase of between 2% and 11% by 2100. Number 3, what is predicted to happen to tropical storm rainfall in the future? It's predicted to increase by 20%. Number 4, what is predicted to happen to tropical storm distribution in the future? It is possible tropical storms could extend beyond the tropics. And number 5, what is predicted to happen to tropical storm frequency in the future? It's not clear, but maybe Category 4 and 5 storms will increase and Category 1 to 3 storms could decrease. So they are our 5 answers. Please make sure that you have made any corrections that you need, and as I say, give yourself a tick if you've got them correct, and then give yourself a score out of 5. So you'll have noticed there's lots of uncertainties within this lesson. How tropical storms will be affected by climate change through their intensity, distribution and frequency is something that just isn't agreed upon. So why is that? Why are we so uncertain about the future? Why can we not decide what will happen with tropical storms in the future as a result of climate change? Well, there are 4 main reasons for this. So firstly, wind speed measurements have only become more accurate recently. So this does call into question the accuracy and reliability of past data. Have Category 4 and 5 storms really increased since the 1970s, or have we just become more accurate in measuring wind speeds? And if we use this data, this past data that might not be accurate, if we use this data to predict future trends, surely our future trend predictions cannot be accurate in themselves. Second of all, predicting how climate change will affect tropical storms is just uncertain. So we base these on computer modelling, which might not be accurate. And also, our Earth is so complicated and complex. Do we really understand all the factors that influence and affect tropical storms and climate change? Thirdly, more people live in hazardous areas. So even without climate change, this is going to increase the impact that tropical storms will have. We are more aware of tropical storms because we put ourselves in their paths. This causes more damage and perhaps influences how we view the intensity of tropical storms. And lastly, could tropical storms and their changes in activity just be part of a natural cycle? Maybe if we had longer sets of data that were accurate, we could perhaps see that over time, maybe tropical storms just naturally increase and decrease in intensity, change in their distribution, and adjust in their frequency. Maybe it's not to do with climate change at all. Maybe it's just part of a natural cycle that humans have had no influence in. So we're going to complete our lesson today by undertaking this main task. You'll notice on the screen there is a quote. Tropical storms will have a greater impact in the future due to climate change. This quote is suggesting that tropical storms are going to cause more devastation in the future, and this is because of climate change. So there are reasons to agree with this statement and there are reasons to disagree with this statement. And this is why scientists cannot come to a consensus themselves about this particular issue. What I would like you to do is to copy and complete the table using the information from the lesson today and your own knowledge to try and build up ideas linked to reasons to agree with the statement and reasons to disagree with the statement. One has been done for you just to help you along the way. So I'd like you to pause the video and complete the task and then resume the video when you are ready to mark your work. So we're now ready to mark our work. So let's just check that we have got the correct ideas under each of the different headings. So reasons to agree with the statement. So why is it that we might agree that tropical storms will have a devastating impact in the future because of the influence of climate change? So we know there's been an increase in category 4 and 5 storms since 1970. We know that wind speeds are predicted to increase by between 2% and 11% by 2100. We know that rainfall is predicted to increase by 20% in the future. And we also know that tropical storm distribution may change, and this could increase the risk to new areas. So people who haven't experienced tropical storms in the past may experience them in the future. And obviously, if people have not experienced them before, the way they manage them or respond to them may not be as effective as it could be. So those reasons you could have put forward to agree with the statement. On the other hand, there are reasons to disagree with the statement. So as we know, wind speed measurements have only become accurate more recently, so future predictions may not be truthful. Predictions are also very uncertain. Remember, our planet and tropical storms are incredibly complex, so the predictions for the future may not be totally understood and may therefore not be completely accurate. Finally, people may choose or have no choice but to live in hazardous areas, so to live in the path of tropical storms. So this could increase in the future the damage and the destruction that tropical storms cause, but it might not be because of climate change. It might be because we've placed ourselves in the path of tropical storms, which therefore increases the number of deaths and the amount of damage. So these are just some ideas that you may have in your table. You may have some additional ideas as well, which is absolutely brilliant. So we've been reviewing this quote: tropical storms will have a greater impact in the future due to climate change. It's now time to decide if we agree or disagree with this statement. We need to reach a conclusion. A justified conclusion is one based on evidence. So we aren't just doing it on gut feeling. We're doing it on the evidence that we've been given so that we can ensure our conclusions are well-rounded and well considered. So I'm just going to give you a couple of moments to decide whether you think you agree with this statement or whether you disagree with this statement. If you agree, I'm going to ask you to give me a thumbs up. And if you disagree, I'm going to ask you to give me a thumbs down on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. So if your thumb is up, it means you agree with this statement, and if your thumb is down, it means you disagree with this statement. Consider why you have that view. Which piece of evidence has convinced you? Why do you think that you have that view, but not the other view, the alternative view? As a geographer, we have to come to decisions like this, and we have to weigh up the options to think about which option seems like the most plausible. So although there is lots to be decided from scientists around what will happen in the future linked to tropical storms and climate change, we are gathering information and data all the time. So it's going to be something that we need to keep a close eye on. So that brings us to the end of our lesson today about how tropical storms may be affected by climate change. Thank you so much for taking part. Please make sure that you undertake the exit quiz.